every week.
Okay, let me just try to get this working right.
Redecorating.
Okay.
Pat.
How's that look for y'all?
Good.
Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. So everyone good?
Yes.
So this is yeah, this is a discussion on personality disorders based on the diagnostic and whatever something manual, 5th edition of that, the DSM-5, which is super fun. That's basically the manual that we use and psychiatrists use to diagnose things, treat things, and it's a bunch of like old suits have determined this is the right thing when it comes to psychiatry. But ultimately, it's kind of up to your own decision if you think that it's right or if somebody has or doesn't have a certain like diagnosis or whatever it is. So first off, financial legal disclosures, I don't have any, but if you have some for me, please tell me because I'm more than willing to sell myself out.
I want to note something on the first slide.
Yeah.
You didn't go through the disclaimer. I think that's important.
It's a pretty good disclaimer. You should read it in your spare time. It's pretty good.
Something about the FCC in there. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So all opinions, information expressed in this presentation do not reflect upon the official policy positions of the United States Department of Defense, American Medical Association, American Psychiatric Association, the United States Department of Defense, FCC, ATFD, EA, CIA, or TBAA. Any currents all lowlies drawn or seen in this presentation are 18 or older and have given their express consent to be seen, even if specifically specified otherwise. This presentation is for parody purposes only and should only represent the desires, beliefs, or political dogma of any of the above organizations or anyone for that matter. Good to go. Okay, so yeah, financial disclosures. So, okay, first off, what is a personality disorder / traits? Personality traits, they represent,
oh my God.
get ready, get fucking ready. They represent inflexible patterns of thinking, perceiving, reacting to the world, and it's basically the ways a person's interacting with the world. These are ingrown like traits, nature to the person's like personality, thinking structure, and matter of doing things. They aren't inherently problems so much as they have a bunch of solutions that do not work anymore. Like my solution to the problem is X, and X is the worst fucking way to handle this situation, but that's the only way I know how to interact with the world, and I'm going to do it that way come hell or high water, regardless of legal, social, or economic consequences. That's the way that I handle with things. These things do start in early childhood. So you kind of get an idea of how somebody thinks, acts during their childhood, and based on genetic factors, your upbringing, eventually they come on to full on have these kind of conditions. You can't formally diagnose them until they are age 18. The only exception to that is antisocial personality, which we'll talk about later. And for a lot of people are going to have a personality traits. That's very common. Almost everyone is going to have some traits for something. But once it manifests itself as a disorder is when they have to be pronounced. Rigid and maladaptive are the 3 words. And they have to cause severe impairment to their work or interpersonal functioning. Like you constantly, like you're in and out of jail, you're in psychiatry wards, like your relationships, your whole world is spinning around you. It's causing you massive amounts of distress. That's the point at which it becomes a disorder. But your personal distress, somebody needs to be in distress. It doesn't necessarily have to be you. Many of these disorders are completely egocentric in the sense that these people do not think anything is wrong. As far as they're concerned, they're happy, they're fine, they're doing great. And everyone around them freaking hates them or cannot stand them because they're insufferable. So that's the thing. So like they might not see it as distressing, but others around them might see it as distressing. So things that can make this worse, any childhood stressors, so violence, stress, drugs. If they were like molested as a child, that's not cool. And they're likely developed from maladaptive coping mechanisms. So things that were necessary to survive when you were a child are now things that are coming to bite you in the butt later. So, okay. And why all this matters. So 50% of psychiatric patients have a diagnosable personality disorder. That's 50% of them on an inpatient psychiatric ward. So this is like my bread and butter. Like on top of their depression, schizophrenia, drug addiction, invariably they have at least traits of not a full-on personality disorder that you have to learn how to navigate. Why it matters for y'all is 10% of the general population also has a personality disorder. So 1 in 10 people you see has a diagnosable personality disorder. 30 to 70% of them carries at least one trait, if not multiple traits, for one or more personality disorders. There's a lot of like overlap in linking with these. Like some people have some from one category, some will have some from another. So it's very much this thing you'll see very much. It's about 50-50 nature versus nurture. And you can really prevent a lot of troublesome interactions with other people if you kind of learn to recognize these traits and realize that this is hard ingrained things. Like you can challenge this all day. You can bang their head against the wall. Very rarely is it going to change. So these are very much ingrained in the nature of these people. But the one thing to always remember is these are actual human beings. They have real concerns. So like they might be insufferable, but end of the day, like it's easier to just blow these people off because a lot of them are just straight assholes, but you have to help them out because they have real problems. Like just because you're antisocial does not mean you can't also have like a heart attack, or you also can't be in huge economic strife or whatever it is. So like you have to always take that into account. And then finally, all these personality disorders, traits, it's all in a bell curve. So there are people that are absolutely raging levels of one of these disorders that they can't even function as a human being, all the way to just some mild symptoms that kind of they can overwork and like rationalize, hey, this is how I like to see things, I shouldn't do it that way, and move on, live perfectly healthy, regular lives. And some of these personality disorders just need to find the right niche in society. There are certain places where certain of these absolutely fit in perfectly, and we'll kind of go over that later. So as we talked earlier, the kind of what a lot of these personality disorders are going to use various defense mechanisms, and these are some of the more immature defense mechanisms, as we put them, and these are the ones that wind up causing a lot of trouble, instability in people's relationships. So the first one is projections, used a lot. It's basically you have bad feelings and you project or you impose them upon somebody else. So like I'm really jealous of my significant other because for XYZ reasons. So I assume they're jealous. Like I'm cheating, therefore I assume they're cheating. It's like a bias of you see something in somebody and you want to throw those feelings on somebody else because it's the only way you understand how they view the world. Therefore you assume others are going to view the world in the same way. Another one you're going to see a lot is splitting. Basically, it's people view things are all good or all bad. So like an organization as a whole has to be the worst ever or something has to be the best over. This can wreak havoc in your relationships, romantic relationships specifically, because you'll absolutely love your significant other until they do one thing out of step and then they are the worst person possible. Everything is wrong. Everything is terrible. And it's impossible to maintain a long, healthy, stable relationship if you have that kind of thinking problem. Regressions just return to an early state of development. So you start to act more childish, more immature when you are increasingly stressed out. Fantasy is creation of more imaginary lives, things that aren't necessarily real, magical ways of perceiving and viewing the different worlds. Dissociation is an even more like severe version of that. You basically have a drastic replacement of your like idea of reality. Like as far as you're concerned, you are not in the current moment that you're actually living in. So you're full on, you don't even recognize like where you are. Sometimes you're not even oriented to who you are, what's happening, the year, the time, the date. People almost have like complete different personalities when something like this comes up. Multiple personality disorder may be something to do with this. Dissociations, multiple personality, it's very much a thing in limbo. Some people think it's real. Some people think it's a load of hogwash. I haven't seen anybody that I was convinced that it was real, but I'm also pretty new at this. So that could change. Intellectualization, you're convincing yourself via like you're like using really intelligent, smart, like basically trying to over rationalize a situation. You're just like, oh, well, I can do this. And you're just using like big fancy words and trying to like add technical complexity to something to confuse yourself or to like put it to the point where you don't have to process the emotions or the strife that you're currently going through. Isolation, pretty obvious. You're isolating your affect, which is your current mood that you're expressing to other people. And you're basically just like removing yourself from that. So it's like almost like not even like recognizing that it's happened. So you're just more or less almost like repressing it to an extent. And also people are they're not necessarily going to behave the way that you would expect. Like something really bad happened and they're going to just act like it's totally normal. They might not even like actively recognize this is happening because it's more of an unconscious process. It kind of moves things from the conscious brain, which is like what's currently in your active memory, to the unconscious, which would be what's not currently in your active memory. Then you also got a reaction formation. Basically, it's an impulse to transform an action to the exact opposite of what you would expect. Like something terrible just happened to somebody, they're going to act super happy, like, oh, this is totally fine. It's the opposite of what they said. Like, oh, I'm fine that my like girlfriend cheated on me. That's not a big deal. I'm not worried about it, even though they are furious inside. And it's just a way for them to better handle and deal with it because they know what they want to do is completely unacceptable. So they're overreacting and acting the exact opposite way that they would otherwise. Regression, repression, very similar concepts. Basically, it's putting the idea outside of the conscious mind. So you're just not even thinking about it, not even acknowledging it, and not even seeing that it did or didn't happen. Acting out is what the lowly's doing. You're just throwing basically a temper tantrum. You're like throwing yourself around. You're acting angry. You're doing that kind of stuff, like throwing stuff, doing things like doing an action toward the outside world. Another loved one is passive aggressive. Basically, you're expressing aggression toward others through basically self-masochism and anger. So you're internalizing your anger and your hatred, and you're pushing that on toward other people. And it's passively because you know you can't be actively aggressive, and it's very much I'm going to try to not be openly confrontational about things. So yeah, these are some of the defensive mechanisms they get. The more you stress them, the more of these people go, and each one of different one of these are more seen in of the different personality disorders. So the organization of the personality disorders. So right now we have it divided into 3 different clusters, and they kind of go around different general ways about doing things. And these disorders do travel in clusters. So somebody that's something from cluster A is likely has traits from the other disorders in cluster A. And that's, disorders in cluster A. Additionally, a lot of significant mental health diagnoses are present in them. Like cluster A is your weird, odd, eccentric people. These likely have family members with a schizophrenia or a spectrum disorder. So like true psychotic illnesses, like seeing things that are weird, have very paranoid kind of thought processes. And you'll see traits that you would see similar thought processes in somebody that's full on psychotic in these thoughts, but they are rational. They understand the world. They can interact the world, and they have enough functionality to go about their day and do normal things. Cluster A is made up with a paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal. We're going to go over each one of these in detail later. Then cluster B is very dramatic, over-emotional, erratic. These are just hot messes of people, and they're comorbid with mood disorders, which is like depression, anxiety. Also, substance abuse is incredibly high in these. Almost invariably, every addict has at least something in cluster B. So, and these are the famous ones. These are the ones you always see. So it's your antisocials, your borderlines, your histrionics, and your narcissistics, and they all intermingle. I've never seen somebody that's exclusively one of these disorders. You're always antisocial, histrionic, borderline, narcissistic. It always ties in together because these are general thought clusters. And cluster C is going to be your anxious, fearful, super nervous, anxious people that just are very terrified of interaction, displeasing others, and that's comorbid with a lot of anxiety disorders. So, and that's the avoidant, dependent, and the obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, which is not obsessive OCD. It's not obsessive-compulsive disorder and obsessive-compulsive personality disorder are not in any way, shape, or form related, nor are they the same thing, nor do they have any increased incidence of comorbidity. So because you have one does not mean you have the other. Totally different things. But our colloquial use of the terms is kind of skewed the edge, so it's something you need to work on defining better, I suppose, or they just need to rename obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, which I'm pretty sure they're doing in 5R, which is the revision for DSM-5. So once they do the update, they do an update about every 10 years. So hopefully we'll have that down the pipe to quit confusing people. Okay, so first one we got here is a paranoid personality disorder. It's about 2.3 to 4% of the U.S. population's probably got this. It's more common amongst men. The criteria for paranoid individual, basically having large amounts of suspicion about everybody, what they do, why they're doing things. You assume everyone's exploiting you. You cannot trust people. Everything is misinterpreted to the point where you view people's completely good-natured actions against them. You think that everyone's out to get you. Everyone's trying to do bad things. These people are incredibly suspicious. They think everything's gonna be wrong. Everyone is out to get them. And the more you stress them out, the more psychotic they appear. They don't have thought processes that would be considered logical or make anything resembling sense, because they just view, if a random they see 4 black cars in a row on a highway, they're assuming that's some security detail after them, trying to hurt them, trying to get after them. And because of these severe amounts of distress and paranoia, they're going to self-isolate. Relationships are very troubling because they are very suspicious of partners. They're very suspicious of friends. That includes the people they've known a very long time. First-degree relatives are very much within the firing line for this personality disorder. So yeah, that's kind of what goes on with them. Yeah, step in if you have any questions during this whole, unless I'm kind of confusing about it. And then the next one, also in cluster A, is the Schezoid personality disorder. Also more common in men, and it's a pattern of very detached, disinterested from social relationships, disinterested from people. Basically, you hate people, you hate social interactions, you have no desire to interact with them whatsoever. You will always choose solitary activities. You have no romantic interest whatsoever. You don't no sexual interest whatsoever. Like, these people have almost no sexual drive. Like, history, 23-year-old guy, good looking, has no desire to, never been on a date in his entire life, never even talks to women, talks to people, always gonna be very isolative. When you see these people, they are super fucking angry 9 times out of 10, or they're incredibly inappropriate. Those are the two presentations. The super angry one are pissed because they don't want to talk to you and they're being forced to interact with you. And the more you interact with them, the angrier they get, because they just want to be isolated. They want to be left alone. They don't want to think about you. They view everything you see about them is a misinterpretation of what they mean, how they're acting, or how they're going to go about doing things. And the other possibility of these is individuals that are super inappropriate. They're very much entertained by themselves. They, a lot of times, they have super crude and brash humor. We had one person that comes to mind. He came in. The nurses thought he was psychotic because he kept making a bunch of dick jokes, hitting on them, doing very like disinhibited things. And we talked to him. He just, that's the way he is. He thinks what he's doing is hilarious. He's totally fine with that. He doesn't give a flying fuck what anybody thinks about that. But for him, he's happy, he's good by himself, and he's totally fine living that way, even though he pisses off everyone that he comes in contact with. But if anything, making people angry causes them not to interact with him. Therefore, he's totally happy about that. The one of the criteria that I don't agree with on this one, it says enjoys few, if any, activities. That's put in there because you're not going to view them as enjoying things, and they're never going to talk to you about enjoying things. But they do absolutely enjoy doing things. It's just alone by themselves, not around with you. Like, these guys would be perfectly fine, like out on the frontier, being that one like lone guy going about finding and exploring. That would be like a perfect example of when this like character traits would have served somebody very well. Schizoids are doing great during the pandemic. This is like the alpha tier pandemic personality disorder. Yeah. Okay, so next one we got is the Schizotypal personality disorder. These people are your wizards, your Wiccans, your anything like that. If you have a weird fringe religious belief, there is a not insignificant chance that you have schizotypal personality disorder. This is, for all intents and purposes, there are a lot of people that think this is just prodromal schizophrenia. Like, this isn't even a personality disorder. This, because it's a very high conversion rate to full-blown schizophrenia. Like 30 to 50% of these people eventually convert to psychotic illness. So that said, they have very much a magical thinking. Like, they think everyday occurrences are special, directed themselves. They think magic, fairies, pixie dust makes things work. They have rationalizations for things that make no sense whatsoever. They think they have special powers. They we had one guy, he bought a knife when he was on leave and put it on his computer, and his computer never crashed since he bought that knife. So like, that's my magic knife. I need it with me or my computer doesn't work. And that's totally normal for him. That's how he views the world. But despite that fact, he's able to completely do his job. The guy was a submariner. He could do his job perfectly fine. Just, he legitimately believes the knife has magical properties, which is producing the ability for his computer to continue functioning. And if you just kind of leave them be, they tend to be pretty okay with things. Just that they're going to probably talk to ghosts. They're probably going to talk to spirits. And they're just kind of weird about things. They're bizarre. They are wizards, is really the kind of way to look at that. They're super magical way of thinking about things. Renaissance Festival employees would very much be the prototypical person that would do this. They get into character. They're very, they live in a different world than we live in right now. So like, super hardcore reenactors, probably the kind of person that you're going to see with this. And they're kind of weird. It definitely runs in families heavily, but they don't warm up to people too easily unless you have their specific interests. So if they love like magic, or they love whatever it is they love, they're gonna be totally fine talking to you. But other than that, they'll more or less isolate if given the opportunity, because they're very much internally preoccupied. But they're totally nice and interactive, unlike the schizoids, who absolutely hate you and want nothing to do with interacting with you in any way, shape, or form. So next one, now we're moving over to the cluster Bs, and starting with B, we got the best of the Bs, which is the borderline personality disorder. This is the disorder that is full on just destroying society as a whole. This is one of the most toxic and destructive like thought processes and way of interacting with the world. And it's very much a growing public health crisis. It's about 1.6 to 5.9% of US adults. And I think that is a bullshit low number. I see this all the time. It is everywhere. Traits are super, super common. It's a very female biased diagnosis. And that is because females tend to get the borderline diagnosis. Males will get the antisocial diagnosis. And it's a bias of about 6-to-1 for borderline in females and about 6-to-1 males to females in antisocial. And they have similar ways of looking at things, but ultimately it's just gender differences produce these differences. So yeah, these borderlines are very unstable, intense relationships with the splitting that we talked about earlier. So you're either the best person in the world or you're the worst person in the world. They need constant reassurance. They need constant interaction. They need to be in a relationship. They have no stable self-image. They constantly feel empty. They have no idea who they are, and they have to latch onto somebody else to define their existence for them, which is incredibly terrible because you got to have a relationship. The first thing you do is I need to immediately find another person to be with, or everything is going to be wrong and I cannot hold my shit together. I know I can't. So you will latch on the first person you find, which in the Tinder world is probably the worst person you can find. My core guys, Travis Zekias, would be the ideal candidate to propose this. You have a partner who is domestically abusing you, has HIV, and you still will not leave him despite having multiple police reports filed against you constantly. Like, these are the kind of people, they need a relationship no matter what it is. They are hardcore substance users. They are constantly in trouble with alcohol, drugs, those kind of things. They have chronic suicidal thoughts, suicidal plans. It's even part of the criteria to diagnose this. Like killing themselves is on the list of things to do every day. It just depends on if it's something that they wind up getting to that day. It's called borderline because they are at the borderline of a psychotic illness, because if you stress these people enough, they lose all grasps of reality. They don't have a concept of who they are, no idea of what's going on, and they behave in manners that just do not make sense. Like, they will running, screaming, yelling at people, very, very irritable, angry, aggressive whenever stress happens. And if they don't like you, there's nothing you can do to get back on their good side. So once they split against you, once you're on the bad side of that, you're the always bad person. You will always be the bad person. So they're very, very challenging individuals to work with, because as soon as you do something wrong with them, they hate you forever and you're never going to get anywhere with them. So they fire healthcare providers like nobody's business. Like, we have one that's gone through 7 providers in 1 year. He's fired 7 different psychiatrists, which is impressive considering our appointments are about every 3 weeks. So they're averaging less than 2 months per provider before they fire them. But there's nothing you can really do, because once they view you as the worst person ever, you are always the worst person ever. Very high suicide rate with these people. It's well over 50% for attempts. 10% or more are going to eventually wind up killing themselves, despite interventions, family structures. And it's very sad to see these people. They know they don't have control over their lives, but the thought processes are so ingrained and so hardwired to them. When they're stressed out, there's nothing you can do to prevent them from basically just destroying their lives. So yeah, terrible to see, but it's increasingly common to see these individuals. But yeah, so, and yeah, the one I like the gif of the girl down at the bottom, because it's basically somebody, the idea is I hate you, don't leave me kind of thing, is like they're constantly testing, and you have to prove your love, prove your worth, prove that you actually care about them, or they're going to just abandon you, because they need that constant validation and reassurance from others. Yeah. Okay, so those are fun. Next one, so it's the male version of this. It's the antisocial personality disorder, and these are the straight up sociopaths and or assholes. So these people are, they have no concept of the rights of others. They have no concept of the emotions or empathy toward other people. That said, they are incredibly good at manipulating, lying, and cheating over other individuals. The stereotypical antisocial is not like a raging lunatic. They're a very personable, nice, super charming in person, because they're gonna use you and manipulate you. Like, they understand human emotion. They just have no conscience to act upon it. As far as they're concerned, if it serves me, it's the right thing I need to do. A lot of these people had during their childhood, they had things like considered like conduct disorders. They had a bunch of trouble with their like teachers respecting authority. A lot of times you'll see them, they were like killing puppies, killing animals as a kid. That was totally fine, totally a normal thing for them to do. And they grow up into adults and they wind up doing those exact same kind of behaviors. Yeah, antisocial. So, I mean, think like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. That's kind of what your stereotypical antisocial is gonna wind up looking like, because yes, everyone likes him, super charming individual, but he can because of that he has allowed himself to get away with a lot of things he shouldn't be able to get away with, swindling people, lying to people, and there's no moral compass or conscience whatsoever. Don't acknowledge the laws in society unless they're immediately confronted with something that causes them to have to care about those laws. The only effective treatment we have so far for these people is the correctional facility, so jail. Like these people, you can't put them in therapy. If you put them in therapy, they're going to take the entire group. They're going to try to get people. They're going to organize people against each other to disrupt the group. They're going to make other people worse. They're going to manipulate the people that need to depend on other individuals, and they're going to learn how to be a better sociopath. So the best thing you can do is get them the hell out of any therapy group they're in. And as soon as they break the law, you put them in jail and you give them the immediate consequences they need. But because of this, about 90% of the prison population has antisocial personality disorder. So prison guards have probably one of the worst jobs ever, because their every day is dealing with these kind of people. Yeah, they just, consequences don't mean anything to them because they just learn how to get away with it better next time. Yeah, just generally not very good people, but also they're very charming. That I just cannot underpin that enough. So if you feel really charmed by somebody, you really like them, ask yourself why you're feeling that. Like if I had more than a few of my attending doctors, like my bosses, they intentionally send you in a room with somebody they know that's antisocial, and they try to gauge what your thoughts about them are. And initially, like, oh, they're really nice. I don't think anything's wrong with them. Like, yeah, they just beat their wife to the like 2 inch of a life before they came in here. So be very worrisome of that kind of person. Yeah, so yeah, look out for the antisocials. They're kind of everywhere, but also there is also a big theory and likely reality that antisocials do perform a very vital service in society. Those that are well adjusted and can understand their tendencies to be terrible people, there are jobs that just necessitate you being an antisocial person. Politics is absolutely one of them, because you're doing things that are ruining people's lives, but you have to do that for the good of whatever it is. A lot of surgeons are going to wind up having this disorder because you're a trauma surgeon. Some guy got shot 5 times. You're having to hold him down, no anesthetic. You're having to crack his rib cage open. He's screaming his ass off. And the ability to just put that out of your mind and not realize that you're causing somebody crippling pain it's a skill that some people have, and it's very useful and very helpful for some parts of society. You just need to be less on the insane serial killer side of the antisocial and more on the, I can more or less repress or not even have empathy toward other human beings. So yeah, good to go on them. Yeah, Hannibal Lecter is probably the worst interpretation of an antisocial ever devised by man. They don't act like that at all. So anyone that quotes that, that's shenanigans and silly. Big thing is, yeah, antisocials they're very much after power and money. That's what they're after. That's all they want. They want to manipulate people. They get a joy out of the manipulation. And next one we got going on here is the histrionic personality disorder. And these are a pretty rare personality disorder, but it's very heavily diagnosed in females. And it's basically, they need to be the center of attention. Like they are always, they dress very flamboyantly, hypersexualizing. They need to be noticed, need to be needed, need to have other people comment on them. Very superficial in their views of emotions. They act like their relationships are super close to other people. They're very fluid in their views on things. Just whatever makes them popular, makes them well liked. These people will constantly change their clothing, change their outfit, change their way of like interacting with people. They don't have a strong sense of self either, but they're able to adopt various different aliases or ways of viewing themselves or ways of doing very things. They think they're close to everybody. Everybody's more or less their friends. Pop stars would definitely come to mind with this, like Miley Cyrus, that kind of stuff. yeah, so just very much attention drawing, center of the room kind of attentions. A lot of stand-up comedians, histrionic, absolutely. And they can be very nice, happy, awesome people. They just view everybody as their friend. They're very gregarious as individuals, but also the core of it is strong. They don't have a tremendously strong sense of self. So we're living through other people and other people's perceptions of them. And they really do need to be noticed as much. Like we had one. They come in, they're wearing like a full-on wool coat and like light up reindeer antlers. They had like the nose and all that stuff. And it was August. So yeah, August in Houston wearing 3 layers of clothing, reindeer antlers and all that kind of stuff. So they're interesting. They're interesting. They're fun. Don't have a lot of interaction with these kind of people in the psychiatry realm just because this is more or less okay. You can be a fun, like, lighthearted person that just kind of has to be the center of attention. You just have to find the friend group of pretty much similar vapid individuals and you'll do great. Okay, next one. Narcissistic personality disorder. So first off, big thing that separates the narcissist from the antisocials. Narcissists, everything is for their own self-aggrandizement. That's all they care about. It's other people's perception that they're the best, and they will make damn well sure you know that they're the best. Everything they're going to talk about ever is about how they're the greatest thing ever. And anything contrary to that opinion is somebody lying about somebody wrong about them. They're the best. They're entitled to the best. They will only deal with the best people ever. And anything short of that is unacceptable, and you will have to talk to their manager. So, yeah, it's a pretty common personality disorder. Men get diagnosed with it more than women, but that's, I think, more or less just because men are viewed as more outgoing, historically speaking, with the personality types than are women. But I think narcissism is more or less plus or minus for both of the genders. It's just more a gendered response to females than it would be to women as a whole. Women are probably just going to get thrown in as a borderline diagnosis, even though they share a lot of the same general thought processes. Yeah, so these people view themselves as they are special. They know what's best, and they know what's best. They're going to become incredibly successful. They play the lottery. They're going to win it 100% of the time, all the time. People do not recognize their talents whatsoever, despite them probably sucking at most things they do. They're the best person you've ever seen. I'm sure everyone has seen a couple narcissists. Yeah, they're very entitled people. They need those around them to constantly reassure them that they're the best, even though they're constantly spouting that out. But the reason why one of the theories on why they're so like out there about constantly tooting their own horn is because they don't really view themselves as incredibly successful, but they need it to be perceived that way, and they want to identify themselves as being this super successful person. Ways to interact with these people: if you have to talk to them, you have to correct them. You have to make it think that it was their idea. Because if you outright say you're wrong, they're immediately going to punch back, no matter what you do. You have to go roundabout. You have to explain your way around to make them think that they came up with this idea, more so than you telling them that they're incorrect. Because if you do that, they're going to immediately dislike you because you're not viewing them as the God's gift to everything that they are. So yeah, very much their own cheerleaders, and they will let you know it very, very rapidly. Yeah, they're willing to exploit others, and they're willing to exploit others to reach these goals. That's just because they just view others as inferior to them, just flat out. It's not because like they like manipulating people. It's just that they're the best, and they need that to be established. Stereotypical Karen is definitely on this level of person. So like they need to talk to a lot of managers, narcissists. Okay, now we're transitioning to the cluster C's. This is obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. If that slide bothers you, I have some bad news. It's a very, very common personality disorder. And it's basically you need control, you need order in everything that you do in your life. Like the person with 27 highlighters for their study guide has everything organized, everything is clean, everything is exactly the way that they need it to be. That is this kind of individual. So they are, they work very much, they work hard, but it has to be done their way. Like anything deviating from their view on how things need to be done is going to be just wreck these people. If things are not aligned the way they want them, things are not organized that way, they're gonna have a lot of stress and they're gonna act out because of this. They're very, very rigid, stubborn in their ways of doing things, and yeah, hoard money, but they hoard more or less everything. They don't like throwing things away if given the opportunity, because they might need that. It needs to go in its special place. And they can be a little hard asses for like ethical and moral issues, but some of them don't have much ethical or moral issues. Just more or less, they just have to have things done their way, and it has to be done organizationally the way that it needs to be done for them. And yeah, just complete perfectionism. Like they will, like on a 3 essay test, they will make sure they'll write the best essay you've ever seen in your life in question 1, and they'll run out of time and not even answer questions 2 and 3. So it can become very detrimental. But as far as traits are concerned, most like professionals or people that are in higher education or have at least traits of this, because being a little bit obsessive about your work is very much a natural thing. It can be very healthy if channeled in the right direction. So these tend to be very high functioning individuals for the most part, more so than a lot of the other personality disorders. And the way this differentiates from obsessive-compulsive disorder is obsessive-compulsive disorder, you have a strong compulsion to do something. Like, I have to touch this door 5 times or X, Y, or Z will happen. Like, my mother will die. I have to hit the desk 3 times or something else bad will happen. And it just continues to, the desire to have this compulsion builds up until you eventually do that action, and then you are relieved. And that build up and relief pattern, that's something you're not going to see in the obsessive compulsive personality disorder, but that is stereotypical for OCD, like obsessive compulsive disorder, not personality disorder. So yeah. So when everyone says like I'm a little OCD, they mean they're obsessive compulsive personality disorder. They don't mean they actually have OCD, unless they're flipping light switches 30 times and like washing their hands so many times that they wind up bleeding, or they're wearing their own like external suit because everything isn't clean enough. Like we had a lady came in yet again, Houston summer, 3 sweatpants, 2 trash bags, 2 pairs of ski goggles, 5 pairs of gloves. That was what she had to wear to get out of her house after showering for an hour. She had to shower 2 hours when she got back from her house. So these people are just, real OCD is not a joking matter. It will ruin your life. It needs severe, severe help. But that's OCD. Those people are very interesting. And the best part about OCD is the only known way to treat them besides a couple medications is exposure therapy. So you have to put them through the exact thing that they hate. So you force them to be unclean. You force them to eat cockroaches and stuff. Wonderful. So yet again, those people with the antisocial personality disorder, that is your job. Just inflicting suffering to people for the good of them in a way. So interesting ways that they do interact. Okay, next one is going to be your avoidant personality disorder. These people have an incredibly negative view of themselves. They view themselves as the worst, most horrible person ever. Nobody would ever want to interact with them. Nobody ever should want to interact with them. They're very, very hypercritical of ever being judged or anybody saying anything bad about them. And they will go to just undue lengths to make sure that people like them, even though they don't believe they're truly worthy of ever having a relationship. Because people like, why would you like the worst person ever? They're super scared, super like hesitant to ever like come in contact with people. Even within like the first like degree relative, like their mother and father, they're still scared to even talk to them. They'll do just terrible, horrible things just to make people think, do what they think will make people like them. They'll go along with anything, even the craziest ideas. Like some of these people are so bad, you can tell them, hey, I'm going to stab you in the hand right now. And they're like, oh, okay. And they'll just give you their hand because they think that's going to please you, which makes treating these people absolutely horrible because they will agree to anything you say, regardless of what the circumstance is. So if you like say, hey, I think you're maybe a little bit sad, maybe a little bit anxious. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely am. Like, oh, I think that you have a drug problem. Like, oh yeah, I definitely have a drug problem, even though they've never even seen a street drug because they don't leave their freaking house. That's the kind of person that has this kind of these problems. The craziest case I can think of off the top of my head was we had a lady. She had a lot of female problems with her. Like she had a bunch of like fibroids, so she was bleeding constantly during like her period was lasting 28 days, all day, every day. And because of that, she lost a ton of hemoglobin, a ton of iron, a ton of red blood cells. So her friend drags her into the emergency room. Her hemoglobin was a 4. The average human hemoglobin for females is anywhere above 10, males anywhere over 14. Her blood looked like Kool-Aid. Like it was terrible. You could just see right through it. More like pink lemonade, Kool-Aid kind of thing. and that was like the blood going through her veins because she was basically on the verge of death. As soon as she stood up, she got dizzy and almost fell over every other time. Couldn't even climb a flight of stairs without being completely gassed. But her fear and desire to please people was just, she could not bring herself to get medical care or get inconvenience somebody enough to get the help that she needed. Yeah, it's just these people, it's a lot of coaching, reassurance. If they're in a good, stable relationship, as somebody that understands them, they can be good, they can be great people, and they can really like go about living good, fulfilling lives. But any job that requires extroversion is not going to be on the table for these kind of people. Like IT workers, they could probably do it. Like anything that doesn't involve working with individuals. Then, yeah, big thing difference between the avoidance and the schizoids, because schizoids also don't like human interaction and really seek to avoid it. Schizoids do not want to live with people and are totally fine with the fact that they don't interact with people because they more or less dislike them. Avoidants want relationships, but they realize they'll never reach the value as a human being to warrant having a relationship. Like they want to be liked, but they don't view themselves as somebody that would ever want to be liked. Like, why would you want me? Kind of thing. So, yeah. If this was 1950, you would be a fantastic housewife, and that would be kind of the avoidant personality disorder. Yeah, the next one, kind of sort of related, is the dependent personality disorder. It's very rare on this disorder, very much female biased, this disorder, and it's they essentially don't have the self-confidence necessary to make decisions about themselves, make decisions about really anything, like even very important stuff like, hey, what am I going to do after I get through school? Like what do I need to do? Answer on this test? Like, what do I want to eat? Like every aspect of their life, they just can't make these decisions because they're racked with guilt no matter what decision they make. They don't understand how they're going to go about doing things. And because of that, they're very susceptible to people taking advantage of them because they find somebody like a narcissist or an antisocial or a borderline that's got all the answers in the fucking world. They're going to be just run through the ringer with these people. Like these are very much the abuse victims that just never report it because they didn't know to, or they're like, I can't decide this. He loves me. It's totally fine. I can go about doing this. But if they get in a bad relationship or a bad environment, they can just get abused to kingdom come because they just don't, they're not able to speak up for themselves, and they're very afraid to be alone. They need to latch on to somebody. Also, a lot of the Munchausen by proxy, basically somebody convinces themselves or somebody else that they have a disorder of some kind. These are the exact kind of people that are very like susceptible to that, or like cults grab these people up to a lesser extent, like any organization that has a strong structure of things, they can just be told exactly what they need to do and how they can live their lives because they're not able to just make these decisions. A lot of times it's a comorbid, like an anxiety disorder they have in concurrence with this too. Very, very anxious, nervous people. So I don't think I've ever seen a dependent that didn't have at least anxiety, if not depression, on top of that. Yeah, and they'll do anything to make people happier if you're told to do it. Okay. Yeah, so that's all the personality disorders. And then now, what do you do? So don't confront people if they have personality traits and disorders. It's not going to end well. 9 times out of 10, you'll probably get told to fuck off, or they're going to push you back, and bad things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. They think you're judging you, or they're something like that. Yeah, don't just diagnose all your friends. Personality is a super situational thing. A lot of severe psychiatric illnesses can look like a personality disorder. Like if somebody's has really a bad anxiety disorder, they can look like an avoidant or a dependent. But once you treat that anxiety, they want to being a pretty normal person. Like some person that's having a manic episode can look like a narcissist because they have a lot of narcissism to them. But you treat the mania, they're not going to act that way anymore. So that kind of thing, like you got to see it a long, pervasive pattern of this behavior to really get to it. Once somebody's really having problems with this stuff, refer them to see a mental health provider. They can help work through some of these problems, some of these issues that they're having. And therapy and medications are definitely available should they wind up needing them. Yeah. So anybody got any questions?
Yeah. So you know of and are very familiar with like diagnosing with these people with these traits like every day. Are you able to compartmentalize that like pretty well so that you don't perform the same actions to people in your life, or is it difficult to do that?
For the individual.
So say like you just like you meet a new acquaintance or something like that.
Yeah.
Are you able to meet that person, interact with them without automatically attempting to diagnose them or analyze them in some way, or is it difficult to?
Oh no, it's a hard ingrained pattern of thinking. Once you like learn how to recognize this stuff, like you're just viewing the traits in every single person. Because I said most people are just made up of clusters of these traits, and it just depends on how expressed they are. Like everyone is at least has some variance of one of these. You probably identified with one or two of them. Like I might act like that a little bit, and that's just kind of just understanding their natural path, natural way of interacting with the world. But the average person is able to understand this is not the right way to go about living and going to move beyond that. But yeah, picking up on these, you get it really quickly. Like borderlines are super easy to spot. Like you can just like walk in the room and it smells that way eventually. It's some of these are flagrantly obvious kind of people. Like we had one that came in just blasted on drunk out of his mind, and his Corona mask was a Crown Royal bag. So he's like, yeah, well, they should have fucking told me to wear the mask if you didn't want me wearing a mask. I drink because of y'all. Yeah, a person with like the suicide attempt number 19 is like, yeah, you have borderline personality disorder. I'm aware of that fact. Like they woke up in the morning, it's like, well, I felt really sad, but today was just going to be the day that I was going to die. I'm like, okay, that's cool. How does that make you feel? Like they were like breaking down crying in a Home Depot, buying the generator they were going to asphyxiate themselves with. And they didn't in any way, shape or form realize this wasn't a good idea. And maybe I don't want to die today because I was going to die today. That was just the way it was. That was the answer. That was the solution to their problem, even though it wasn't. That was very much the solution didn't work anymore. The answer that didn't work. Yeah. Interesting.
How is antisocial different from like being a sociopath?
It's not. It's the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Two words for the same thing. Antisocial is the more nice word of it. Sociopath is from the older DSMs is what they used to use sociopath, but now it got a bad rap in society, so we changed it. Like how people used to be called like Nimrods and idiots and stuff. Those are legitimate like intellectual levels based on IQ scores, and they become derogatory terms. So we went to retard. And then you'll see all this literature from like the 70s saying, well, it's bad to call people idiots and Nimrods. We need to call them retarded is the more progressive term. And now we're like, that's a bad word. So it's intellectual disability. And given 20 more years, intellectual disability will be a mean word that we can't say anymore. So antisocial just became a bad word. So we're not allowed to use it, quote unquote, but I mean, people still do.
I read something somewhere saying a lot of like big business owners are also sociopaths or have antisocial
Absolutely.
disorder.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the high-functioning sociopath is 100% a real thing. Because, I mean, all these traits are handled differently. I mean, people that are more intelligent are more able to recognize these and move them toward a force for good. So, yeah, a relatively intelligent person with antisocial traits can leverage them to do good things. Because some of those ability to, like, not care about other people and kind of sort of manipulate people but not, like, totally fuck them over can be very useful in a highly competitive field. Whereas somebody that's like downright retarded that's trying to manipulate you, like IQ in like the 70, 60, 70 range, that's the kind of person that leaves their house, comes back with a Red Ryder BB gun and a ski mask and tries to rob their own parents. And they then get called out by their parents and drugged to a psych ward for being an idiot. So those kind of people. So you got a wide spectrum of things. Like a not that intelligent person with like narcissistic disorder, like fundamentally believes they are God and they're the best thing ever, versus somebody that like has enough intelligence eventually will realize, okay, I'm not the best thing ever, even though I am pretty awesome. And like they're able to rationalize and understand those things. So yeah, definitely less smart people have a harder time like understanding these is problematic.
I have a question. Go ahead, Pat.
No, my question's not very good.
Mine's worse. Hey, Max, can I see your shiny bald head?
I don't have a webcam.
You loser! What the fuck's wrong with you?
Fuck you. I have a webcam.
It's like $20 now.
Yeah, but people.
The Navy owns you. You can pay for it.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
My question was,
I just wanted to-
which anime girl is best anime girl in this presentation?
I don't know, man.
I was going to ask a real question.
Oh, please go ahead, Nathan.
I read on a Mongolian throat singing forum that anime is a personality disorder, and I just wanted to hear your take on that.
Pretty reasonable. It's also a crippling amount of autism to have that kind of thing. I mean, the kind of person that decides to cover a presentation with anime girls is definitely of sound-minded body and doesn't have anything wrong with them. They're definitely don't have any schizotypal traits at all. Don't worry. Totally normal behavior.
Back to Mongolian throat singing.
Exactly.
Have you practiced this?
Yes.
I have.
Me?
Yeah. Asker Bane actually can kind of do it.
I'm sure that Nathan will agree with me when I say that I think that we actually recruit for some of these personality disorders.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, like 100%. Yeah, the subforce. Yeah, the subforce loves your schizoids, and you love your you're absolutely. Put me in a box and don't let me talk to people. They're gonna do great.
I think it's a distinct advantage.
It is. That and autism are definitely the sub-community's best friends. Recruiters are narcissists. DIs are narcissists. Borderlines are everywhere, and I pick a lot of them out of the military. Yeah, I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint, a lot of these, you can make a lot of logical reasoning why these personality types and disorders do exist. Because, down the road, I mean, it's like genetics only reward reproduction. They don't really reward anything beyond that. So, like, granted, these are very maladaptive people, but anybody in cluster B is likely to be very sexually attractive and at least reproduce. They're not going to have a stable relationship. They're not going to raise the kid, but they're going to have a kid. So that in themselves, totally acceptable. That's gonna wind up getting passed along. The cluster A's a little bit weirder, but you can find people that like them, and the dependents make a lot of sense because they just latch onto anything or anybody that they possibly can see. And OCPD people tend to be very high-functioning, successful, so they accumulate wealth and success. Therefore, their genes are passed on.
Can you go back to the schizoid slides? They were like some of the very first. And honestly, I felt that there's a couple things that even I have.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, funny.
There you go. Yeah, but the thing is, it didn't cause you dysfunction. You're a functional human being, and that's really the end of it. Like, if you
That's an insinuation.
function, do things in society, you can hold a job.
Yeah, I can do that.
Like, as soon as you walk into it, like, people that like walk into your room, you just give them the bird and tell them to fuck off and throw shit at them. That's a real schizoid. Like, yeah, these are it's a pretty destructive. Like, we had one schizoid came into the burn unit after they found him. He scalded his legs on with hot water accidentally, completely not suicidal or anything like that. And he didn't come in for 4 days until his room started smelling so much because of the rot his neighbors brought him in. Like, that was the level of which he does not want to interact with humans. Like, these people will sacrifice their health, their everything to not interact with people. That's why, like, the prognosis on somebody like this is pretty terrible because they're not going to seek out the care that they need. That said, they're really happy, so I mean, leave them alone. They're happy. Yeah, really, really dangerous. Well, they're not dangerous as people, but like to themselves more so than anything else. Yeah, they come up as just very angry.
So I just want to kill myself.
Good. That's normal.
My
taxes, you're a millennial.
Yeah, my taxes will scrape me off the road, so fuck it.
Exactly.
So are all of these disorders treatable in some way, or is there just some where you are unrecoverable? There's no kind of drug, no kind of counseling that will, and I'm not talking like an individual case, like where this one person is unrecoverable, but just like this one disorder cannot be fixed or cannot
Antisocial.
be fixed. Antisocial.
Your concept of how you view the world is so it's not anything we recognize as normally human. Like, people are not people. People are objects and things that are designed to produce you exploit to get to your ends. Like, they don't view, like, they understand human emotion. They just have no concept of empathy, and it really can't be trained into them. That's why we need to we put them in jail now. That's why they used to execute people back in the day.
Go back to that slide.
Antisocials?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, as you're talking about the things.
Yeah, I will. Okay. So yeah, the antisocials, I mean, it's the general idea that about like 2 to 3% of the general human population will never adequately fit into society, and society just has to find a way that how we're going to deal with these people. So back in the day, they would banish them from the cave. They would like put them in the front lines and get them killed. Now we put them in jail because that's what we view as more humane. They used to the way they used to execute people regularly. I mean, that was your antisocials, your criminal behavior was really what you were seeing as the people that were doing that. And that's just how society chose to deal with these people, because they're an incredibly disruptive force to generally to society, to people, because they don't respect property rights. They don't respect individual rights. And because of that, they just become fundamentally dangerous individuals. So they try to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So kick them out, kill them, or isolate them from places where they can do any additional harm. It's unfortunate because I said, like, if you put these guys in therapy, the only thing you're doing is you're not giving them any insight into what's going on with themselves. You're teaching them how to be a better sociopath. Like, they're terrible. They will take like a ward of 30 people. These are the kind of guys, they'll get half on one side hating the staff, the other half loving the staff, and you'll have fucking brawls during the day because they're convincing psychotic people, like people with like actual like schizophrenia or mania or something, that like so-and-so's out to get them, and they'll just sit back and watch the consequences because that's fun to them. Like, they get joy and happiness and satisfaction out of doing shit like that. Car salesmen, invariably antisocial. Also, they love cocaine. But yeah, antisocials, they love drugs because why the fuck wouldn't they? Like, it's not like any of the other societies' laws matter to these people.
Are they people though? That's the real question.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly don't view you as a person. That is very true. Like, they don't view humans as fundamentally as people. Like, empathetic. Like, they don't view you as like experiencing emotion or anything like that. They know how to play with your emotions. They understand them very well because they're super charming. But you get the mask off and it gets really nasty really quick. But yeah, if you really, really like somebody and you just met them, that's the scariest and most dangerous thing for a person to be, is super, like, not even like, hey, this is a nice guy, but like, oh, I really like this guy. I'm so glad I can do this. Yeah, he's telling me to do this. I'd love to do that for him. That is terrifying. Like, at least that's what in like medical school, they made sure to embed that in us, because these are scary. Like, these people can absolutely do dangerous things, like to go from being totally happy to like assaulting somebody like moments later, not even care, not worry about it at all.
What if she comes to your house, makes out with you, cuddles with you, and then doesn't talk to you a couple days later?
That's just normal.
Yeah. That's okay. For typical female behavior.
All right.
I refer to you to this slide. This slide will answer your questions. Like, every crazy ex you've ever had, this explains it all.
He's not an ex yet that I know of. She's just not talking to me.
Yeah.
Rip.
She expects you to understand her and magically come to that conclusion that she needs X, Y, or Z, and you need to do that, or you're the worst person ever.
I've been texting. Nothing's been coming of it. So anyway.
Oh, God.
Good luck.
You'll be happy for you.
Birds. You know, just don't get rid of those birds too soon.
I hope he dies.
I can outlive you, man.
If I give him away, he will literally he'll kill himself. He'll pluck out all his feathers and bleed to death. Huh. He adores me. Like he's unwilling to come off my shoulder, which is why he's biting my finger right now.
Oh God.
Well,
I did this to myself.
Thanks for putting together the presentation, Max. I have a hard time discerning whether you took a longer time putting all the information or picking which anime girl goes with which slide.
Anime girl.
Definitely the latter.
Yeah.
It was hard to track down this many GIFs of high quality.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Hey, anything that can be explained will be explained better by cute anime girls.
Question, Pat, since you seem to be in charge of all this.
Yeah.
Who can give lectures and on what?
Anyone on anything. That's the premise.
Okay. Can I do one on commercial brewing?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I mean, that's really the only thing I know, of course.
And Nathan, I know you're also talking about maybe some RuneScape economy.
What do you think I'm working on right now?
RuneScape economics. Yeah. Anyone?
Skimmy 35K.
Well, I have several ideas in the hopper as we speak, so kind of just going through that right now.
Awesome. I'll go ahead and stop the recording then.